Good morning. My name is Kurali Shankar. I'm a technical marketing engineer covering SD-WAN security project. We've talked to customers over the course of this project to see what their enterprise use cases will be for direct internet access out of the branch offices. Many of them said that they would like to protect the cardholder data, protect patient data in case of healthcare vertical, and simply protect against any data breaches. In this use case, we call this the compliance use case, where customers would want to tunnel all of the traffic from the branch, including internet traffic, all the way to the headquarters. Since all traffic leaves the branch encrypted, the attack surface is very minimal in this use case. We could provision the IPsec VPN, enterprise firewall that is application aware, and intrusion prevention. Another group of customers tell us that they have guests coming into their branch offices with their smart devices, and they are liable to provide good enough content filtering for these guests. In this use case, since we expose the guest's internet-bound traffic in the clear out to the internet directly from the branch, the attack surface is a little bit wider than the previous use case, but we could leverage the IPsec VPN for the employees' headquarters destined traffic as well as internet traffic, and the enterprise firewall that's application aware, and URL filtering. Another group of customers tell us that for their employees' traffic, it doesn't make any sense to haul all of the internet-bound traffic to the headquarters and get suboptimal performance. These customers would want their employees to get optimal performance for selected SaaS applications, such as Office 365, Salesforce, and other AWS-related services. For this use case, we could leverage the enterprise firewall that's application aware, intrusion prevention, and DNS web layer security. Since we expose the employees' internet traffic out in the clear right from the branch to the internet, the attack surface is wider than the previous use case, but the rich security features, once leveraged at the edge devices, will protect the branch offices. Another group of customers tell us that they would want to tunnel only the headquarters related traffic via the VPN tunnel. All internet traffic, either generated by the employees or the guests, go to the internet directly from the branch to the internet. For this use case, we could leverage the enterprise firewall that's application aware, intrusion prevention, and DNS web layer security. We'll talk about each and every feature in the upcoming slides. SD-WAN security brings all of these on-box capabilities: the enterprise firewall that's application aware, IPS, URL filtering, as well as AMP feature. There's a reason why I grayed out this feature, because this has been committed to be delivered in March 2019. And the cloud feature that we're bringing in is the DNS web layer security. This is the umbrella integration that provides content filtering at the DNS layer by redirecting the DNS packets to Cisco Umbrella. All of these features could be managed by our newest acquisition, VipTLS UI, which is vManage. This could be hosted in the cloud or on-prem to be able to provide a single pane of glass to provision, manage, monitor, report, as well as troubleshoot. All these rich features we're bringing into all our traditional Cisco platforms: ISR 4K, 1K, ENCS, that is ISR-V, CSR, and the ASR 1K, and the VipTela V edges. The ASR 1K will only get the application aware firewall and the DNS web layer security. These features, the IPS, URL filtering, and AMP, are container-based applications, meaning we take the control plane cores and are running services on those control plane cores. And the cores that are available on the ASR1K, simply not enough to push all of the throughput or scan all of the throughput that the ASR1K is capable of pushing. The Viptela V edges do not have the concept of container-based applications, so these platforms will only get the stateful firewall and the DNS web layer security. Now, all of these features will be available in the very basic DNA Essentials subscription. Umbrella DNS monitoring is only monitoring. If enforcement is required, Umbrella subscription has to be purchased separately. And AMP file hash analysis, I called it out with an asterisk because it is targeted only for the March 2019 release, and it does not include the threat grid sandboxing feature, which we will also be bringing for the March release. The DNA Advantage package will include everything from the DNA Essentials package. On top of that, it will also include the advanced SD-WAN topologies, which will provide the partial mesh or the full mesh if that is the customer's requirement. And Cloud App Discovery. This is the integration of Cisco Umbrella with the Cloud Lock, another acquisition of our security business unit, to be able to provide visibility into 30,000 different applications. Now, the enterprise firewall that is application aware, we've integrated our stateful firewall with our NBAR application visibility engine to be able to provide visibility into 1,400 different applications. So we can block based on individual application or group of applications or category of applications. This will provide segmentation between different zones, different interfaces, different sub-interfaces, different VPNs, or different VLANs. This solution will make an enterprise branch a PCI compliant branch. The intrusion prevention piece, this is a container-based application that we could natively run within the router. The signatures are released by our Talos organization that is rated very high in the industry to provide absolutely the highest efficacy possible. We provide signature whitelisting option, and this solution, in addition to the stateful firewall with the application awareness, will make an enterprise branch a PCI compliant branch. The URL filtering, this too is an on-box capability. We have about 82 different categories based on which we could allow or block traffic, as well as allow or block traffic based on web reputation score. Each IP address that pops up in the universe gets a score on a scale of 1 to 100. The highest reputation websites will have a score between 90 to 100. To give you an example, we offer custom blocked pages as well as whitelists and URL, white and blacklist URLs that we could configure. DNS web layer security. This is content filtering provided at the DNS layer. Once the device is provisioned for this feature, we intercept all of the DNS packets. We change the destination IP address from wherever it is going to and fix it up with Umbrella Resolver IP address. Once the packet goes to Cisco Umbrella, now Cisco Umbrella will have to send the DNS response back. If Umbrella subscription has been purchased, and depending on whether that category is allowed or denied, Umbrella will send a DNS response back. If the category is blocked, then they will send their own block page IP address as DNS response. If the category is allowed, then they send the end web server's IP address in the DNS response. On the umbrella portal, we have capability to decrypt HTTPS traffic as well as intelligent proxy. The advanced malware protection that has been roadmapped and committed to be delivered in March 2019 timeframe. Once our device is provisioned for AMP, we watch for any file that gets uploaded to the internet or downloaded from the internet via protocols such as HTTP, SMB, FTP. We compute an MD5 hash for the entire file and generate a SHA value and double check with our AMP cloud to see if the AMP cloud has seen this file and be able to provide us the SHA value with the file reputation. If AMP cloud has seen that file, we will hear back the SHA with the verdict whether the file is good or bad, and that is file reputation. If AMP cloud has not seen the file, and if this device is provisioned for ThreatGrid, then we could send the entire file to ThreatGrid for further sandboxing. Once ThreatGrid has done what it is supposed to do, it sends a verdict back to the AMP cloud about the file or about the verdict that it arrived for that particular file. So in the future, if the same platform or router were to see the same file get uploaded to the internet or downloaded from the internet, AMP will be able to provide us the SHA. AMP also provides us the file retrospection value. Should a file become bad to a good or good to bad, that information is also relayed to the device from the AMP cloud. Now this screen captures the vManage version 18.4 scheduled to be released end of November 2018. The platforms on the far left column and all of the features on the top. As you can see, the Viptela vEdges will not get the IPS and the URL filtering pieces because these are container-based applications. Also, the vEdges, the enterprise firewall, the stateful firewall, and the application awareness piece are completely separate and are not tied together. And the ASR1K will also not get the container-based applications. Again, DNS web layer is monitoring only. Should the customer require enforcement, then a separate umbrella subscription has to be purchased. Now another slide with a little more detail about container-based applications. In order to run container-based applications, the platform should support one or more control plane cores for us to be able to install this application and run IPS, URLF, and AMP as individual services. In platforms such as ISR and 4321, they are capable of holding 8 gigs of DRAM and 8 gigs of boot flash, which is required in addition to the 4 gig DRAM that the platforms come with. To run the applications, we have the control plane cores, but in order to save the files pertaining to these applications and to be able to store the alerts and the events that they generate, we ask for additional 4 gigs of DRAM and 4 gigs of boot flash, which will make the units a total of 8 gigs DRAM and 8 gigs boot flash. In these lower end models, we have one control plane core available for us to run the application, meaning these model routers will be able to run IPS URL filtering in the cloud lookup only mode, meaning if a host behind the router is going to want to load CNN.com, we send that lookup to the cloud to determine what category that URL belongs to. Once we hear it the first time, subsequent users going to the same CNN.com page will be able to get the verdict or the category that it belongs to from the cache that we maintain. In medium level platforms, we have two control plane cores available, meaning we are capable of running two instances of this application. And these devices also have 8 gigs of DRAM and 8 gigs of boot flash. Even in this case, we support IPS URL filtering, only cloud lookup, and AMP, which is file hashing. But since they have two control plane cores, we're able to spin two instances of the application, thereby process more throughput. In bigger platforms where we have two control plane cores available, these routers, however, are capable of supporting 16 gigs of DRAM and 16 gigs of boot flash. In these platforms, we can support IPS, URL filtering on box. We could download the entire category database on box and be able to look up using the on-box database. If the category for the URL doesn't exist in the on-box database, then we have the capability to send it to the cloud for the lookup. And support AMP file hashing. And since these platforms support 16 gigs of DRAM and 16 gigs of boot flash, we can provision ThreadGrid as well, which requires memory for us to store the file and be able to send the entire file to ThreadGrid for further sandboxing. And for all of the platforms that have 4 gigs of DRAM and do not have the capability of expansion, we support the enterprise firewall that is application aware with DNS web layer security. Now moving on to the demo, the entire demo SD-WAN security I have put in the UCS M2 C-Series 210 box. It's running ESXi 6.7 with one headquarters up in the top that you see and down on the bottom with two enterprise branches. These routers and the hosts behind these routers, one Linux host behind each router and one Windows host behind each router, talk to each other using the MPLS router. And if they need to go to the internet, there is direct internet access breakout from each of these branches, and they go to this iNet router and go out to the internet. The only piece of hardware physical that exists in this topology is the Google Fiber box. Now these two routers, MPLS and iNet, are running traditional iOS XE images. These three routers at the headquarters and the two branches are running the iOS XE SD-WAN image. Now let us take a look at vManage dashboard. This is vManage dashboard where we have included three new widgets, one for firewall, one for IPS, and another one for URL filtering. Under the configuration gearbox, we've added a brand new section for security. Under security, you could add a new security policy completely based on the intention, the use cases that we went over. It is purely based on intent-based networking. If you choose the compliance use case or the guest access use case, direct cloud access use case, or the direct internet access use case, the appropriate features will be configured as part of the workflow. If none of that applies to you, you could always pick the custom option and proceed with configuring the features a la carte. Let's take a look at the security policy that I've configured here. Now, as far as the firewall is concerned, I have allowed the inside hosts to go to the outside, and I implemented 4 rules: HTTP, HTTPS, DNS, and ICMP. Let's take a look at the intrusion prevention screen. It is a very slick looking UI. The only 2 mandatory fields that we need to fill out is what signature set do you want to implement. The difference between the three is the number of signatures that are enabled by default. Security will have the most signatures enabled by default. And tell us whether you want IPS in the protection mode or detection mode. Protection will be inline. Should a signature get fired, the packets will be dropped. The detection mode, however, you could see what is going on, but the packets will not be dropped should a signature get fired. Anything else that's not mandatory to run this feature, you will find that under the advanced option, signature whitelisting, as well as changing the alert log level. And once this piece is configured, we show you a preview of what you just did down in the bottom half. And the last and final thing is to apply that to the VPNs. Which VPNs do you want to be subjected to IPS or IDS? The URL filtering. This also is a very slick looking UI. The only two mandatory fields that require input are the web categories, whether you want this blocked or allowed, and what categories do you want blocked. By simply choosing a down arrow, we pre-populate 82 different categories. You simply need to add a checkbox and the counter up on the top increments, and these categories get added to the tail end of the list that you already have. Or if you want to search for financial related categories, you could just simply type them, uppercase or lowercase, doesn't matter, and you can simply check that category for it to be added in the end. And also tell us what web reputation score would you like to allow. Do you want the users to go only to trustworthy websites, or very low risk websites, or moderate and above websites? I would never want our users to be going to suspicious or any high risk websites at all. Anything that's not mandatory for the feature is under the advanced option. We provide options for whitelisting URLs, blacklisting URLs, which get processed first before the categories get processed. So you could allow a good category, but then some of the websites belonging to the category that you allowed will be dropped or could be dropped because they belong to suspicious or high risk reputation score. Here's the custom blocked content page that you could serve to the users should they browse to a category that is not allowed. This has a character limitation of 256 characters. If this isn't enough, then we could always redirect the users to a completely different page and capture the block page content in that separate page. And here are some of the alerts that can be enabled that could be sent to an external log collector server. For DNS security, let's go ahead and edit that. Here, as you see here, the umbrella registration status, it already shows configured. The reason for it to show configured is that once umbrella subscription has been purchased, once you log into the umbrella portal, you could look up on the very top, you will see an API token. This API token is a long string of numbers that needs to be simply copied and pasted one time on the vManage settings screen, as you see here. Once this is done, vManage will take the API token and provision the security policy on all of the routers, as you see here. Now it is the same API token that it has grabbed from the settings section that you configured. Again, selected VPNs. You can pick and choose your custom VPN, redirect the DNS request to Umbrella, and redirect other VPN DNS packets to a custom DNS server. It could be any DNS server provided by the ISP or Google DNS or 4222. Anything that is not mandatory for this field, again, will be available under the advanced, an option to disable encryption. Encryption is enabled by default. We give you an option to disable encryption, encrypting DNS packets and sending to the Umbrella cloud, because we add the inside private IP address of the client and the device identity in the DNS packet, and we encrypt that with the proprietary DNS script protocol and send it to the cloud. We go under reporting and look for activity search. We will see that if we look for just the blocked content, you will see that the routers in my topology have been blocking access to certain categories: games, gambling, auction sites, and other websites that we have blocked for the internal IP address in the topology to the external web server's IP address. And these are the blocked ones. If you look at under the devices that are registered, you will see that we have the CSRs, the Cary CSR, the Durham CSR, and the Raleigh CSR registered on Umbrella portal. Now we're done with the security policy and moving on to policy summary. Here is where, for the container-based application, for the events and alerts to be collected at a central log server, we could provide an IP address for the log server and also tell which VPN that log server is hanging off of. Another option that we provide is the failure mode. Close or open. Open is the default behavior, meaning if something were to happen to the engine that's running within the router's container, what do we do with the packets? We let them go through. The router will process them and send the packets out without the packets being inspected. But if that's not the intention, we can switch that to closed, meaning if something were to happen to the engine running within the router's container, the router will black hole traffic until the services come back up. Now that we're done with security policy, here is how to tie the security policy to the device template. In our case, all three routers are running CSR 1000V model. So each device, when you create a feature template, has to belong to a particular platform that is supported. So in our case, we are running CSR 1000V. So our template is deployed to 3 devices. So it is this template where we need to attach the security policy that we just configured. And if you scroll down all the way, here is the security policy that we just configured. There could be other security policies as well. You could create security policies based on use cases. You could create security policies for different platforms. It's up to the needs and requirements. And this needs to be chosen for the container profile. But before we do this, there's one manual item that needs to be done, which is uploading the image for the container application. That is done under the software repository section. If you switch to the software repository section here and go to the virtual images, this image, which will also be available on CCO end of November, needs to be uploaded using the local computer. So once The image is uploaded into vManage. It uses that image and provisions the container, installs the application, and runs those services for us. And once this is done and deployed to all of the devices, our dashboard will start populating data. I have some scripts running on these Linux hosts that are behind these edge devices that are constantly sending traffic that the firewall builds firewall sessions for, that we can look. These could be toggled and looked for inspected versus dropped packets. We could switch from 24 hours to 1 hour. So for the last 1 hour, the entire enterprise, the 3 routers, contributed to that many dropped packets. So at any point, you can click on it, get details about the 3 routers that have dropped packets. Further, we could click on this particular router and it will show you for what reasons the firewall dropped those packets. For the intrusion prevention, this could be toggled between severity as well as by count. For severity, the high severity is colored in red, while the medium severity is colored in blue. So for the last 1 hour, these 2 signatures have been triggered that many times in the entire enterprise. And if we click on this one particular signature, this shows us the details about all of the sources and the destinations they went to and the VPN that they belong to and the number of times these signatures were triggered. And you can switch that between 1 hour or 3 hours. This widget is the URL filtering widget. You could toggle this between blocked versus allowed. Again, you can switch this to the last 1 hour view or 3 hours or 6 hours. We're not going to populate all 82 categories here, but we will populate the categories for which the devices saw traffic. Let's look at one of the categories here, the real estate category. Switch to the business and economy instead. The 3 routers have processed that many sessions for that particular category the past hour. That's about the overall dashboard. Now I'm going to show you the device-specific dashboard. So come under the monitor and go to the network and pick one of the 3 routers. Let's pick the Carry CSR, for example. Under the security monitoring, we've added firewall, intrusion prevention, URL filtering, as well as umbrella redirection. On the firewall section, we provide a little bit more drilling down than we do on the overall dashboard. You can click on the policy that we've applied, and it will show you the rules that we configured, one for HTTP, HTTPS, DNS, and ICMP. Anything that's not allowed will be caught in the class default and be dropped. If you click on this further down, we will show you the protocols that we have allowed as part of this particular rule. Intrusion prevention, again, this could be toggled between severity and count. And down below, we show you the signatures that were triggered and the signature ID, as well as whether the signature was a critical signature or a medium alert signature. The legend captures that with the color coordination as well. For URL filtering, we could toggle between blocked versus allowed. And we show you all of the categories and the number of sessions that each category has processed on this particular router. We could toggle this between 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours. As much space as vManage has to store all of the information that it receives from all of the devices in the entire enterprise. For umbrella redirection, we show you that this device has been successfully registered to Umbrella Portal, carries CSR, and the VPN is VPN1. Once you go under the deployments and network devices, you will see that our device has been successfully registered here with the default policy like I showed earlier. And we do have a local domain bypass configured for domains completely internal to the enterprise for which we do not have to redirect the DNS packets to Umbrella Cloud. These DNS packets that are destined to the local domains will be left untouched. For the DNS redirected packets, we give you a breakdown of the time and date of the day and the number of packets that we have redirected to Umbrella Cloud. This concludes Great Wall demonstration. Thank you so much for your time today.